Today's Torah study. Today is Monday. It's a new week, and it is Monday, May 10th. We are learning Yom Yerushalayim. We're learning today about actually something to do with Jerusalem as well. Today is Jerusalem Day. It's the day that Jerusalem was reconquered after a couple thousand years, almost about 1900 years of exile.
Yeah, 6 Day War.
And today we're learning about the stories of the ancient kings of Israel. We're going through a really what is effectively a crash course through the prophets of Israel. That's what this Monday morning course is. I just want you to know that it is a very important course in Bible literacy. That's what effectively we're doing here on Monday mornings. We began this course probably towards the beginning or the middle of the pandemic. And I'm trying to remember where we began. It was around the time of King David or King Solomon. I think we began probably around the time of King Solomon is when we began this course. And we've been going through, we just last week finished the stories of Daniel in the lion's den. And now we're going to be taking it back to other current affairs that were going on that same time as Daniel was being thrown into the lion's den with a very interesting personality that you probably never heard of before. Someone that's going to be very, very interesting. I see Elaine is with us, and Dean and Cookie, as well as everyone else that's with us live. The live studio audience is growing. Got Andy and Steve and Ed and Keith and Marty and Rob with us. And it's great to be studying together. Good morning, Howard and Susan as well from Boynton. There was a fellow today is going to be our main character is Hiram. Hiram, the king of Tsur. Now, Tsur is the city of Tyre. Anybody have been to Tyre? Tyre. You been to Tyre? It's like a port city in Lebanon, right? It used to be a very, very important. You went there? Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd really. It's not the kind of place that you really hang out in. Tyre. Sur is an ancient, very ancient city, very important city mentioned many times in the Torah. Yeah, I guess it was the ancient version of New York City. All right, or Washington. So Hiram was the king of Tsur, and he lived a very long life. He lived 1,200 years. Marty's not happy about this.
I never had a cold.
The Medrash tells us that Hiram, king of Tsur, lived for 1,200 years, and he ruled over his people with a mighty arm. King Solomon bought from him cedar trees, the cedars of Lebanon, with which to build the holy temple. And Hiram would take pride in this, saying that it was in the merit of the cedars of Lebanon that Solomon was able to build that great house for his God. Hashem heard these words, and he said, when Hashem heard these words, he says that in vain this king of Tsur is taking pride in himself, because the day will come and the temple will be destroyed. The temple which was built for my honor will be burned in fire, and there will be no remnant of the cedars of Lebanon in which he prides himself. Even after the temple was destroyed, Hiram continued to make himself arrogant by saying as follows: no one is as wealthy as me in the world, and there is no one who lives as many years as I do. Right. I mean, this guy lived longer than the Methuselah, according to this Medrash. Right?
Why would Hashem have allowed him to live?
Well, let's check out his story. Let's get to know him a little bit better, right? This arrogant king commanded his servants to build for him a palace like the likes of which had not been built anywhere in the world. He wanted a dwelling, a throne that would be similar, that would resemble the throne of God, and therefore he commanded his servants to build for him 7 heavens, corresponding to the 7 heavens that are in the heaven, with the foundations in the sea, 40 square pillars of metal were built inside of the sea, and above them were built these like 7 floors or 7 stories, corresponding to 7 heavens. The bottom floor was made out of glass with the shape of the sun, the moon, and the stars engraved upon it. The second floor, the second heaven, was made out of metal, and on it were round stones which made tremendous noise when they rolled one to the other, like giant marbles of stone. Thunder, yeah, makes sense, right? The third heaven he made out of solid lead. The fourth was made out of bedil. How do you translate bedil? It's like some sort of a LED version composite. I don't exactly know what it is.
I don't know what the
Yeah,
word
it's
is.
called, I think it's called Bedell, B-E-Y.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's interesting that you say that it's called. It's got an English name which sounds exactly the same. It's quite fascinating, actually. Okay, good. The fifth heaven was made out of copper, and the sixth one was made out of silver, with the seventh one made out of pure gold, which was inlaid with precious stones and pearls, which also they made great noise. Between the various heavens was flowing many waters, and on top of the seventh heaven, Hiram commanded for a great throne, an impressive throne to be built, upon which he sat, and he's declared, "There's no one like me in the entire world. I am a god and not a person." I mean, with that kind of a throne.
It's not struck down.
Yeah, but with that kind of how did he not get struck down? Well, just wait and see what happens to this guy. He's not gonna, this doesn't. There's one thing I have to tell you, Marty, that God doesn't take well. The Talmud tells us that about the arrogant person, Ein ani vehu yecholin ladur, he and I cannot coexist. So God can handle anything. He can handle all sorts of indiscretions, but when it comes to arrogance, there is no repellent as arrogance. In fact, what is idolatry? Idolatry is a form of arrogance. We've studied this idea in Hasidus, that when you serve idols, you're attributing power to yourself. The most worshipped idol is our own ego, right? Our own pride and our own money and other extensions of our ego, which is what we rely on. But basically for our own security and peace of mind. When we choose to rely on God, that is the ultimate act of humility, which is the antithesis of arrogance. And that's why it says about someone who's humble that he will receive all the greatest blessings. There's a fellow in the descendants of Noach. His name was Yaktan, which means little guy, tiny. Yaktan will be small. And he had more children than anybody else. And Rashi points out, why did he have so many children? Because he was called Yaktan, and the fact that he was so humble, the fact that he was humble is what brought him, served as a lightning rod to the blessing. Another example is Joseph. Look at Joseph. Joseph's life is like a pyramid. He's growing in arrogance, with his brothers and his dreams over his brothers, and his multicolored coat, and he's the favorite son, and the more arrogant he becomes, the more abused he is. And then he begins to fall. When he gets sold as a slave, he crashes to the bottom and he gets thrown into the dungeon. He spends all those years, 12 years in the dungeon, 2 years in his master's house, 7 years. Here's what happens. After about 14 years at the bottom of the barrel, that's when he soars to the highest heights. He now becomes prime minister of Egypt. But now he understands how to deal with power. He doesn't let power get to his head. And that's why Joseph rises to become probably the most powerful Jew who ever lived. Maybe compared to Solomon or Esther. He might be rivaling, but certainly one of the top 3 of the most powerful Jews who ever lived, because he understood how to deal with arrogance. This guy Hiram, though, had no clue. So let's check out what happened to him. Hashem now reveals his words to Yechezkel the prophet. Remember Yechezkel, he was in Babylon at this time. Hiram was in Tyre, in Lebanon. So in Yechezkel, who's in Babylon with Daniel, here's what he receives the prophecy. Hiram, the king of Tsur, the king of Tyre, is priding himself, and he says that he is a god. Go and say to him, do not take pride in your strength. You are a mortal man, just like every other mortal man, and you are in the hands of God, you and everything that you possess. I should go to Hiram, says the prophet. He asks God, I should go to Hiram, master of the universe. How will I get to Hiram and tell him your words? He sits up there somewhere up in the heavens. I mean, how many of you are going to reach this guy? He behaves like he owns the place, right? Even before Yechezkel was able to receive an answer to his questions. You remember there was a guy a few weeks ago we learned about who experienced this transportation mechanism, God's, wings of eagles. He was transported with a storm, right? So too over here, before he even got an answer to his question, a wind came and carried Yechezkel to the very place, to the very top of the throne, to the very place where the king of Hiram would sit. When Hiram sees him, he's like, how did you get here? Right? He got frightened and he asks in fear, how did you succeed to rise up to here? Who brought you to me? After Yechezkel delivers the prophecy, told him who sent him here and what he's here for. Hiram answered him with arrogance and with audacity. I indeed was born like every other person. However, I am different to other people because no one has lived as long as I. And that's a fact. You can't dispute that. Even in the days of your King Solomon, I was still alive, many hundreds of years ago. I remember Solomon, your great-great-great-great-grandfather. Imagine a guy comes up and he says, I used to do business with Abraham Lincoln. You'd be like, respect. You know what I mean? I shook his hand, So since, Joe Biden did? He's a guy. Since then, the house of David has had 20 kings. We've learned about many of these kings along the way. And the kingdom of Israel has had 21 kings. In other words, I worked with your predecessor 21 predecessors ago. Right, what is this? Biden is number 45, 46, what is he? Right, so Lincoln would have been, I don't know what number he was. 16, okay. It's like, yeah, I worked at 16, you know what I mean? All right. 5 prophets I've worked through 5 prophets. 10 high priests, all of them died in my lifetime. Take a look and look at my throne. Your God lives in the hearts of the sea. And me too, I'm also surrounded by water, and I sit on top of the 7th heaven that I built for myself. Yechezkel fulfilled his shlichus, his mission with sincerity, and he tried to subdue the arrogance of the king. He said to him like this, listen, true, you've lived a very long life. Your wealth and your strength is very, very great. However, there were other kings like you and even greater than you, and nevertheless, they did not deny the creator of the universe, and they weren't as arrogant as you. Hiram was not influenced by these words of the prophet, and he called out with a great voice, you just jealous of me. And therefore, you came to me to tell me these words. Here's what I want you to go and tell your God, who sent you to me. Tell your God that I am not afraid of him. And even before the king finished his words, a great storm broke out in the sea. I'm thinking a hurricane here, right? Seems like a hurricane broke out. The 7 heaven, what was that?
Typhoon.
Something. Well, typhoon is a hurricane. That's what they call it in India. It's the same thing.
Pacific hurricane is typhoon.
Yep, it's like.
So then what happened was this. Here's what the hurricane did. This is entire. Right? Here's what the hurricane did. It shook from side to side the 7 heavens of the 7 levels of this massive palace, of the massive throne that Hiram built for himself. The king fell off his chair into the water and he almost drowned. How's that for embarrassing? With the remnants of his strength, while he was struggling to swim, the waters were going wild from the storm. He cried out to Hashem and he begged Hashem for help. Aha, Hashem Elokim. The word aha is a Hebrew word, by the way. Aha, Hashem Elokim. Aha is a Hebrew word. Aleph, hey, hey. It's Hebrew, right? He says, aha, I got it. This is my aha moment. Okay, I get the message. He says, aha, Hashem Elokim. I have seen that your strength is greater than my strength in the water. However, on the dry land, I'm stronger than you. You know who else said these chutzpahdik words? Another person who said these same chutzpahdik words was the Roman emperor who destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, the second temple, the Emperor Titus. While he was heading back to Rome with the spoils of Jerusalem, the spoils of the Holy Temple. No questions coming in here, by the way? Oh, I got to plug in. Any questions coming in, by the way, on Facebook or YouTube? It seems pretty quiet here today. The other guy that did this was Titus, right? Now, Titus was a very arrogant guy. He did some terrible things to the Jewish people. Desecrated the Holy Temple. He added insult to injury. But as he was heading back to Jerusalem in the Mediterranean Sea, carrying the spoils of Jerusalem, he had a hurricane broke out, same thing. And he said, okay, I see, God, your strength is very great. Only in the water. Your strength you're a God of the water. That's how he drowned the Egyptians in the water, right? When the generation of Noah rebelled against you. How did you fight against them? You flooded them. You're a God of the water. Okay, I get it. And the water, your turf. But on the earth, I'm going to beat you. So a heavenly voice calls out and says, you think that you're mightier than I upon the earth and not upon the water. I have my tiniest soldier I'll send towards you, and you'll see you're no match even to my tiniest soldier. And the story in the Talmud there goes that as he set foot on the ground, because the storm abated. Good morning, Hannah. The storm abated, and a gnat flew up his nose. You remember the story? I've spoken about it. A gnat flies up his nose. He breathes it in, and as he tries to blow it out, it goes deeper, deeper, deeper. Eventually, it goes into his brain, and it buzzes until the day that he dies. This gnat buzzes. He has no menucha, no rest, till the day that he dies. And when he died, he asked that his head should be split open to see what was going on inside of there. The Talmud says that they found the gnat was the size of a pigeon. It literally ate his brain. So this is the story of Titus. Now, Titus, surf and turf, right? Oh, that's a good line. So here's what happens. And the same guy here, Hiram, says the same thing to God. Can you imagine the audacity? The guy's drowning. And this is what he says. By the way, is God so lacking in self-esteem that he needs to assert his strength? The reason is, as we'll learn in this week's JLI class, Thursday night, is that the purpose of creation is for Hashem to be recognized as the creator, as the master of the universe. The purpose of creation is for us to reach higher consciousness and awareness, right? It's not for us to continue groping in the darkness. It is for us to be aware. When the great leaders become aware, that influences the masses as well, right? So these conversations is not because God is, getting instructions from his therapist on how to deal with his attachments, but rather it's about the purpose of creation, which is just like Pharaoh, right? I'm bringing these plagues upon Pharaoh in order to publicize my wonders in the land of Egypt, that people should know me, that they should know a higher purpose, right? Okay, so let's wrap up the story here. What happens is Hiram is drowning, and in order to show him his strength, the strength of the Creator, the wind blew Hiram to the earth, and there he stood up on the dry land. And as he stood up on the dry land, from the what do they say, from the frying pan to the fire, the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed him up down to his eyes. Right? It swallowed up the seven heavens, his wondrous seven heavens. I guess these would be probably the seven wonders of the world for that time. He built up these seven heavens, and they were all swallowed up in the earth in front of his eyes. And ever since then, they've never been found ever again. Hashem hid them, these seven heavens, for the righteous when Mashiach comes. So they were put away in storage. Right? They were put away in storage, right? Interesting, right? So basically, Hashem was trying to educate him, not kill him. Hashem was trying to educate him. Before the king was able to calm from his downfall, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, remember the one who destroyed our first temple, at that moment, before he was even able to catch his breath, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, declared war against him. Hiram did not want to subjugate himself to the king of Babylon. In those days, a king declares war against you. You have a choice. You can either become a slave, give me your wealth, give me your wives, give me your everything. You'll be my slave, and you'll keep your life. Or let's fight it out, right? Winner takes all. So he refused to subjugate himself to the king of Babylon, and he said, "I have warred against God, and I have survived." I mean, this guy, he doesn't get the message, right? I've warred against God and I've survived. I will not fear from a king of flesh and blood. At the head of a great battle, Hiram went out toward Nebuchadnezzar. He fell in battle and he was taken captive. He was put into a narrow jail cell, right? That's where the king of Babylon placed him. This king whose arrogance knew no bound, he was placed into a tiny little jail cell. And there inside of that tiny cell, he died from hunger and from great suffering to his body, to great degrees of suffering.
From that gnat in his head.
No, don't mix up. That was Titus. The gnat that was Titus. Don't mix up the story. He had a different outcome to the same response to God, right? Let's keep on moving. Just one more piece over here. One more piece. We're going to move now. Remember to another part of the world. So what happened was we went Daniel in the lion's den last week, and today we moved to Lebanon to see what's going on at that time in Lebanon. Again, all this is culled not from the history books, but from the Medrashes and the Talmud. Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmud, the Medrashes and the commentaries on Torah, right? So now we're going to flip over to the 10 lost tribes. Remember the 10 lost tribes? They were lost already by the time Nebuchadnezzar showed up on the scene, because according to one version, he was actually a soldier in the army of Assyria, of Sancherib, king of Assyria, who successfully exiled the 10 lost tribes. And when he came to attack the 2 lost tribes, when he was about to conquer Jerusalem, today's Jerusalem day, right? So he was about to conquer Jerusalem in the night of Passover. We learned about this. He was also an extremely arrogant king, and it was his arrogance that caused the downfall. If you remember that story, you can always review these stories, these classes at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. And what happened was that they all mysteriously died in a plague, in an epidemic that night surrounding Jerusalem. You can still see the remnants of the wall of Jerusalem from that time in the old city of Jerusalem. When you look for the broad wall, it's about like 12 feet thick, I think, maybe more. And Nebuchadnezzar, so therefore Jerusalem did not fall then, right? It fell later when Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylon and he conquered Jerusalem. But back to our story, what happened to the 10 lost tribes? The 10 tribes who were exiled from the land of Israel, after them were sent so after the 10 lost tribes were exiled, the Babylonians now conquered Jerusalem, right? The 2 remaining tribes, Judah and Benjamin, from whom most of us are descended. Most of us Jews today, the people that know that they're Jews, are generally descendants of Judah, Benjamin, also a smattering of Levi, because we have Cohen and Levites as well, right? But the rest of the tribes are gone. I mean, they'll come back with Mashiach. But when Babylon started exiling the Jews, it was not in one shot. It was in stages. First of all, they exiled the king, the leaders of the tribe of Judah, with the ruling class, as well as the king Yehoiachin. And we spoke about this in a previous class. They replaced him with another king, with his uncles. They called him Tzidkiyahu. And in Jerusalem stayed the residents of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, with the Levites and the Kohanim the Kohanim and the Levites leading them. Now, Tzidkiyahu, the uncle of Yehoiachin, who was the exiled king, he was placed by Nebuchadnezzar over the remnant of the Jews in Israel. Over a number of years, the Jews lived in Israel, the remnants of the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem. The temple was not yet destroyed. They still lived in Jerusalem, relatively calm and peaceful. The ground beneath them was giving its fruits, and the people worked the ground, and they saw blessing in their work. One day, an emissary came to Jerusalem from a place called Ludkia. I think Ludkia is on the way to Tel Aviv, right, Steve? Ludkia. No, I'm mixing it up with Latrun, actually. I'm not sure exactly where Ludkia exactly is, but it's one of these cities that are mentioned many times in the Talmud. Not Lud. Maybe it is Lud. Could be Lud. Lud is near Ramle, right?
Is it spelled Lamed Vav Dalet?
Ludkia. Yeah, one word. So anyways, this guy came from Ludkia to Jerusalem to buy oil, and he had much wealth in his hands to pay for the oil. The people of Jerusalem sent him to Tyre, to Tzur, and when he came there, they sent him to a place called Gush Chalav. Where's Gush Chalav? Gush Chalav is like a county in Israel. And they sent him there. Over there in Gush Chalav, which means like the county of milk, there you will find much oil with great abundance, and you'll buy as much as you want. When he came to Gush Chalav, the people told him to go to one of the wealthy people of the place. He couldn't find that wealthy man in his house because that guy was in the field dealing with the stones in his olive tree, amongst his olive trees. When the man asked him, what?
According to this, Laodicea is the main port city in Syria.
Oh, very good. Okay, so it's a Syrian city. Okay, very good. So when the man asked him, that would be north of Lebanon then. When the man asked him if you will sell him olive oil for the people of the city, the rich man replied, I will give you as much as you want. I have a lot. If you could just wait for me until I finish my work, and then we'll go together to my house. The emissary waited, and when they came and towards evening to the man's house, he was wondering, is this the very wealthy man that everybody was talking about when they told me to go to this wealthy man? He looks like a poor man. He looks like a field worker. but he didn't say a word. At the entrance of the house was a servant, and she was holding a pitcher of water. With awe, she approached the owner of the house in order to wash his hands and face from the dirt of the field which was stuck to him. After that, she hurried and she brought him a gold pitcher filled with oil, and he used that to anoint his body. I guess in those days they used it to sort of it's kind of like a bath, I guess.
Don't you do that?
Not really. But like baby oil. They do it to the babies. They constantly cover the babies' bodies. I don't know what they do. It smells like some sort of oil, whatever. After they calm down a little bit, they caught their breath. A beautiful a feast fit for a king was served for the rich man and for his guest. Afterwards, the man brought the emissary to one of the rooms of his house where he kept the barrels of oil, and he gave him oil for all the money that he had. If that's not enough for you and you want more, I will give you with pleasure, said the wealthy man. However, I ran out of money. I used all the money for the oil, so I ran out of money. The rich man was a good person, and he was generous, and he agreed to give the man even more oil without payment. Take as much as you want, and I will lend it to you, to the people of your dwelling where you live. And then later on, you'll pay me the money that you for the oil that you bought. On all of he rented every Uber in town. He rented every horse and every donkey in town from Gush Chalav, and they piled up the barrels of oil, and they went to Lutkia. There, the people of the city came out towards them, and they received them with great honor. After they paid the man from Israel, the man from Gush Chalav, after they paid him for his oil, the emissary said to the people of the city, "Do you see this man who came with me from Gush Chalav? He's a great, wealthy man, and nevertheless, he takes no pride in everything that he has. He treats himself, he walks with incredible humility. He's dressed like a regular person, and he works in the field just as if he was some sort of a day laborer. If he wants, he could sit in his house all the days of his life and not lift a finger, and all of his needs will be taken care of. It's just that doesn't want to make himself useless, and he doesn't take pride in himself. And that's the reason why Hashem, his God, has blessed him with so much wealth." So in contrast to Hiram, the arrogant king of Tsur, who was given so much longevity and so much wealth and power, he died like a miserable prisoner of war, right? Because it was his own pride that sent him crashing down. So too, on the flip side, it was this ordinary person whose tremendous humility is what earned him the great reward that he ultimately received. And the message to us is very clear, that we can be our own worst enemies, or we can be our own greatest blessings. The choice is ours. We walk around all day long, being angry with God. We can be angry with God all day long and say, "Oh God, why did he do this to me? Why did he do that to me?" There was actually a beautiful letter I have to share with you. Somebody wrote to the Rebbe a letter, and he writes to him about how nothing has gone right in his life, and how Hashem really doesn't like him. And the Rebbe's response, I never saw the original letter, but the Rebbe's response, he writes like this. He says, "I'm absolutely shocked at the way you write your letter. Not once, but twice you say over there that God has blessed you with nothing. Yet you make no mention of the incredible spouse that you have, the many children that you have. People live their whole lives waiting for such blessings, right? Yet here you are complaining about all this wonderful stuff that God has given you." And then the Rebbe says the kicker. He says and probably the reason that you don't have the stuff that you need, I understand it to be financial success. The reason you don't have what you are so yearning for is because you have this stinking attitude. I mean, the Rebbe didn't say that, but he said because you have I'm paraphrasing, right? But because you have such an ingrate, because you're such an ingrate, that's why you are not meriting to receive the stuff that you need. Because here God has given you so much stuff and you're so ungrateful about it. Why should he give you any more? You're being arrogant about it. You're not being humble about it. Therefore, you're not getting more. And the Rebbe says to them, the key to your blessing is yourself. Don't look into the next stock, and don't look into global affairs, and look into the Wall Street Journal to see your blessing. No, look inside of your own heart. Daven, force yourself to humble yourself before Hashem, and that is going to hold the key to your blessing.
Another apropos quote about that one is that run away from honor, and honor will chase you. Run to honor, and honor will run away from you.
Right. Run. Right. Whoever runs away from honor, honor runs away from him. And there's another flip side to that. Whoever runs after honor, honor runs away from him. Right. So the key here is, guys, and this is an underlying theme in all of the Tanya that we've learned, is that if you're able to humble yourself before God, and how you do that, that doesn't mean by making yourself into a doormat. It means making yourself cognizant of the fact that Hashem is within you. Hashem is within you. You are a part of Hashem, and therefore you have so much to be grateful for. Right? That's actually going to be a major theme in tomorrow's Tanya class. But if you say, "Oh, God, thank you, but no thank you," I'll delegate God to the synagogue. If he's lucky, I'll designate him in the sanctuary. But the rest of life, I've got it under control. When a person tells me, "Rabbi, I don't pray for myself. I got myself under control. I pray for other people." That's arrogance. Think about it. It's arrogance, right? That attitude is the bane of our success, right? If we're only able to have the wisdom to adopt an attitude of humility, that's when we're able to grow beyond our dreams and expectations. Elaine, yeah.
It's like that story you told a couple of years ago about the guy who has a family with a lot of children. It's always so noisy. It's terrible in his house. Doesn't know what to do. He can't concentrate. He goes to the rabbi. So what should I do? The rabbi says, bring a chicken into your house. And then bring a cow into your house. And then bring a sheep into your house. And the guy says, what are you talking about, Rabbi? It's no better. He says, okay, now take the sheep out.
It's worse.
Take the chicken out. Now take the cow out. And then the rabbi says, how is it? And the guy says, oh, it's wonderful.
Never been better.
Never been better. So it's the same. People.
We have so much, and we don't realize what we have until we don't have it.
Exactly. And that's the point, is that whatever you have, it could be worse. Don't look at where you are now.
So
it could be better, it could be worse.
So Rob, that was a beautiful story. I'm grateful that you're able to share that story. Where we're going to go tomorrow in Tanya is to adopt a new approach to davening, a new approach to what you call deep davening, which is to approach the davening with an attitude of gratitude. And that's going to be the theme of Tanya chapter 46, with adopting an approach where we start at the top, with all the tremendous things that we're grateful for. And when you meditate upon that at the beginning of davening, you automatically will be filled with a certain emotion that's going to carry your prayers over the top, all right? That's going to be the theme of Tanya chapter 46 tomorrow. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for joining me today. Today is Monday. And on Wednesday night, we're having a special event from rapper to rabbi, a special Windows to the World Zoom event with Rabbi Moti Flickstein from the Chabad of Delaware. He used to be a rapper, non-religious kid in college, and he found his way to becoming a Chabad rabbi. It's a great story, very inspirational. Hope that you'll join us Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom, as advertised in the email, Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Thank you, Mary. Good to have you with us. And to everybody else that's with us live or later, shalom, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
David, the deal is tin.
Ah, tin.